Hello and welcome back to another episode of We Burn Blue. It's been 1 month under our new manager, pretty much. 8 games done. And what are your thoughts so far, Sharon?
Okay, we're gonna dive straight in, yeah? So no hi, hello, how are you? I'm pretty sure this is the first time we're speaking straight after our previous pod, but yeah, man, I'm doing all right. Um, yeah, I think we obviously took a lot more W's than I projected. So yeah, I have nothing really to complain about. Where do you stand with his first month?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much in the same boat. More wins than we predicted. The losses versus Arsenal were kinda, you could have seen them coming before. I mean, you could argue that even under Maresca, we might have lost those. So, overall, the league form is looking pretty strong, and he's been able to, he's tweaked a few things that we're going to get into, right? And I think there are some positives from that. So it's good, right?
It is, and to be honest, his record is probably um, like, yeah, it's probably similar to what people refer to as the new manager bounce, right? I don't know. I've never found that Chelsea have have that experience with a new manager. I mean, maybe I have a very short memory, but it's kind of giving those vibes. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned, played eight under him, and we've won six, and no draws, at least according to what we've got down here. Which is, I kind of like it like that. I don't really think, oh, sharing the points is something we really look for unless we're down to like 9 men or 10 men or whatever it is, and it's a really like it's a back against the wall kind of game.
Yeah, exactly. And you talk about that, right? Like you look at the Napoli and the West Ham games. Those are games where we've come back, and West Ham especially, like we've never overturned a 2-0 deficit, in the Premier League and gone on to win. So the fact that he's been able to pull off those results, it could be new manager bounce. It could just be new energy. Like the way the likes of Pedro and Enzo have been playing under him. It's like, they've gotten more confidence with the way he's approaching it. So I mean, it's all around looking really positive, and I think I'm happy with the way things are going. I think you had some points you wanted to discuss about how it was under Maresca and what's different. How the approach under Rosenior has, um, changed things around. What he's been doing, his approach to games, his tactics. So you want to maybe give us a bit of an overview on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try not to talk at length, because I know how drony my voice can be. But I as far as prep goes for this pod, can't really complain that I get to do like a lot of quote unquote research. It's mainly just watching extended highlights from the Chelsea YouTube channel, and I actually realized I hadn't caught up before the last pod. So I ended up actually watching the last few games under Maresca, basically post Wolves and up until Bournemouth. So I saw that game as well. And like it's funny how like Maresca at the end of it, the players clearly had a lot of character, and I think you highlight these results against Napoli and against West Ham. That character has been there under Maresca as well, and I would say towards the end of Pochettino, I think the team really grew together. um, but one thing that Maresca never really addressed in his time at Chelsea was maybe like profligacy in front of goal, and I think his approach to trying to get us to score goals, the way he was doing it, really didn't get the best out of our players. And of course, he's not helped by the fact that we don't have any like sort of natural finishers or any ruthless goal scorers, except for maybe Cole Palmer. I'd like to think Pedro is coming into that sort of mold. João Pedro is coming to that mold now, but we never really saw that under Maresca. And of course, the other thing he never really addressed in his time is the defense. So whether it's defending in transition, basically like pushing way too many players up the pitch and getting caught on the counter, or defending in a low block or mid block, particularly against, again, defending against crosses from wider areas, from deeper areas, earlier crosses, and also your usual set piece, the set piece stuff that we've talked about almost every podcast when Maresca was a manager. Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight, you know, what it was like going back and watching all those the highlights for those games. You know, just relived a lot of some painful memories, a lot of goals conceded where we really didn't need to, and again, like a lot of chances we were creating didn't really kind of suit the players it was falling to. So I think those are issues that Rosenior has inherited from Maresca, and that's really what I wanted to highlight. Actually, it's okay, now that you've changed manager, right? It doesn't really solve the underlying issues on the pitch. And, behind the scenes, it clearly hasn't changed too much in how the club operates. So there are quite a few things there for Rosenior to focus on. And I don't know, like, how much to take away from this first 8 games, but what do you think he has done so far in addressing those issues?
I think he's been so first off, you have to give it to him that he's not really had time to work with the squad since he's gotten. It's just been a game every 3 weeks, so he hasn't really had, sorry, every 3 days. So he hasn't really had those opportunities where there's a week without any games to actually sit with the squad and try to implement his ideas. So, given that, the fact that he is still trying out a couple of things, like his first half and second half performances have been very different, right? Like first halves under him recently, like there's been some experimentation. He's been trying with like a three at the back sort of approach to in some situations. There's been a lot of like I remember pointing this out, where I saw was it Fofana and Chalobah who were switching their positions quite a bit in a game which in my opinion didn't really make sense. So yeah, he's been trying to experiment and stuff, and now finally I think not having by getting the 2 wins in the Champions League, finishing in the top 8 and not having that set of, playoff knockout games, whatever you want to call them, that's going to give him some time to really start implementing his ideas, and I think we should see more of what he's trying to do. But in terms of what he's been able to accomplish, I think I feel like under Rosenior there is a lot more directness in our play. Like you said, under Maresca, there it didn't seem like he was clear how we were going to score goals. There seems to be some sort of you know direction to goal under Rosenior. I think he's really unlocked Enzo, which is something that Maresca was always reluctant to play Enzo in this role, and now like we've seen him score some very good goals, like late into the box runs, getting those goals. Um, Very Lampard-esque. I think a lot of people have mentioned this, and it's true, right? Like you think about the game versus West Ham, João Pedro's cut back, and who's there to finish it? It's Enzo making a run into the box. So I think utilizing Enzo this way, integrating Andre Santos, so there's more midfield solidity. Caicedo is providing really good cover, and Enzo's being able to push up. I think there's been a tweak in the approach to wing play, and I think more than anything, this is something that we have said Maresca was guilty of, and then he sort of fixed it. But the reluctance to use subs. Maresca used to be very slow sometimes, very very slow to react to tactics from opposition managers, and I think Rosenior has been able to do that very quickly. Like he's not afraid to make a lot of subs, to use subs at halftime, and they've been positive changes. I think a lot of the wins that have happened late in games have happened because he's identified a problem and he's made the changes to solve it. So um, it all seems to be positive signs. Now, granted, I mean, in the 2 games versus Arsenal, especially the last one, right, where we the away fixture where we lost 1-0, right? I feel like maybe his approach in that game, when I looked at the lineup, to be honest, when I saw the lineup, I was like, there's no point. Like, there's no point to this game. We're definitely going to lose it. It's way too passive and way too defensive, and you're relying on, sort of keeping them out in the first half and maybe trying to get a goal in the second half. It seemed too much of it seemed too defensive, too safe, and it didn't show real intent. So that's the only thing that I might really be like I didn't appreciate that. But what are your thoughts? Like these are all obviously like my observations. Do you have anything else you've seen or any differences?
Yeah, I mean, I'll come straight to it. The Arsenal Chelsea game, I actually just finished watching it just before we started recording. And honestly, I had already I knew the result when the game finished, and I saw a few remarks on the old X platform. Um, I think I fundamentally disagree with a lot of the kind of the feedback that actually he was not proactive enough, and he should have done this and he should have done that. I mean, frankly speaking, we would have been blasted out of that game if we started, if we had started Palmer, Estevao, and played this sort of fluid 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 that he had kind of brought on the 60th minute. If we had started with that, we would have been done by 60 minutes. Arsenal are that ruthless. We don't have that clinical edge, and so it's kind of hard for us to imagine, like what that's like. But dude, if we had opened up to Arsenal much earlier in the game, it would have been a different story. And they've literally scored with one of the last kicks of the game. So I think actually, like, he's demonstrating, at least from my perspective, he's demonstrating that he's able to manage games a lot better than Maresca. Like you say, he's very adaptable, and he doesn't like hang about. If he realizes he's gotten something wrong, or if something he's tried is not necessarily working, he will change it, which is a good thing. I think you need to be proactive, especially when you're Chelsea manager and you've got these players at your disposal. Not everybody's going to come and play against you and be favorites. Most of the time, Chelsea are, we're the ones who have to take the initiative. It's with Arsenal where it's a different story. Even though they were 1-0 up on aggregate, right? Um, th- they're still favorites to win the game, even in the 90. So he's kind of got to manage the game. He goes in and makes sure he keeps a clean sheet for the first half. Matches are very long, man. Like goals are scored in an instant, and if I guess part of the game plan was also keeping it tight, yes, but also he was hoping to invite Arsenal on and counterattack with two centre forwards on the pitch. I mean, João Pedro, false 10 or whatever. I don't know what you want to call him, but I don't actually mind that that was the game plan. And I think it's an outcome bias that, okay, he brought on Estevao and Palmer, and it just didn't click for whatever reason. It didn't click, and we got knocked out. The truth is, right, people will say that it's okay, they didn't have enough time and we should have started like this, rather than just doing it for 30 minutes. But that's just, again, it's an outcome bias. Had it worked out, had we scored a goal and taken it to whatever extra time or penalties or whatever it is and gone through, yeah, people would be saying something else. So I think, look, in two-legged affairs where this approach is actually quite common, that the tie is so long, right, over two nineties, it actually makes sense what he did. Um, and then of course there's like the external factors like Estevao having some personal issues in Brazil, so he only arrived back into London. I think it was the day before the game, and some other external factors. I think you wanted to touch on that might have influenced his decision making on that game, right?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I was really surprised to not see Reece James in there, considering that he only came off the bench versus West Ham, and it was almost like it was a he was being conserved for the Arsenal game, and of course, Palmer also starting on the bench. I mean, these are the big games. You need your big game players, right? So I was a bit surprised with that move, and to see Reese not involved at all, like my immediate thing was, okay, he's picked up another knock, and that was like worst case scenario. But then it comes out that no, he's being rested tonight. I'm just like, why are you resting Reece James for this game? And then you go back to the end days under Maresca where there's this whole conversation about the medical staff dictating how long players must play and influencing certain decisions and having to be followed, right? So again, it's like, are we already seeing the signs of that interference so early on, right? And that now brings up an entire other conversation, which is, does he actually have, like, what's his level of control again? I mean, we all know, I think it's an open secret that Chelsea want a manager who's going to follow the guidance and the instructions from whoever's being involved, right? Like even under Rosenior, since he's come in, we've seen like a Joe Shields on the pitch before the game where you wouldn't actually imagine him to be, right? Like chatting to certain players. Um, that's not something that you'd expect from one of the directors or heads at the club, right? Like it's usually just the coaching staff and the physios who are on the field, right? So I mean that's just another thing, right? Like is it too early to be having this conversation about how much control he has? I don't know, but like yeah, that's sort of the external factor, right? It's like the elephant in the room at this point.
Well, yeah, I think the real question is if there's anything wrong with it, right? Because it's kind of clear, like you say, that he's a coach, so his responsibilities probably include running the training sessions with his team, with his backroom staff, kind of liaising with the medical team to find out who's fit and everybody's fitness levels. Um, you know, Obviously there's going to be a huge element on tactical setups and opposition analysis, but I think that will be the be all and end all. I don't think he has any input on transfers. I don't think he has any input or leeway in the commercial areas of the club. So, honestly, like this head coach thing, it's a laser focused role, right? Um, but again, look, if you look at the length of his contract, and the fact that like he's been brought in halfway through the season. I know it's from a sister club, right? But there is at least backing, like on the face of it, from the board, right? So they clearly believe that this methodology will work. And to be honest, now I don't see it being a drastic issue. It just depends on the temperament of the manager, right? Or sorry, the head coach. So, like, we're praising him for how he's been in certain games where Chelsea haven't started great, and bad early starts to games is another theme that I saw in the rewatching Maresca's games before he left. But like if Liam Rosenior takes a risk, starting with a back five against Arsenal, right? He's not afraid to change it. For instance, we're crediting him with that. Like we're saying it's a good thing, and maybe that is a trait that's developed by a manager or a coach who's solely focused on improving his players and the tactical battles of each game and understanding your opposition's style of play and how to set up against them. you know like maybe it's something that's manifested through this environment, and obviously he's a young guy, so he's still got a long way to go and obviously a lot to work on. But yeah, I think the question isn't so much then what exactly is he looking at. I think we kind of already know like how far his reach goes into the club. It's more a question of whether it's the right approach or not. What do you think?
I think that's fair. I don't know if it's the right approach, though. I think that eventually, as we saw with Maresca, a head coach is going to want more responsibility. And if they show that they've earned it, I think they deserve it. So I feel like, we'll have to see how this plays out, how it goes with Rosinia. Um, and maybe that's because we're also seeing that our directors seem to be making decisions that don't look like they're 100% coherent. So if you have the right people running the club and the structures are all clicking the way they should, and you're seeing success at every level, maybe you could say it's the right approach, but at least the way it's implemented right now, it doesn't seem like it's the right approach for Chelsea. You brought up a point about like not being involved in transfers. I don't know how far that is true, and my reasoning for saying this is, I mean, it was pretty clear going into Jan that the briefings that were coming out and the general consensus was that Chelsea are not going to really do any business in the January window. There's pretty, they're just going to focus on the outgoings. And I mean, we should do a transfer recap, right? So of course there were some outgoings that we knew were coming and they were finally sorted out. The likes of Disasi to West Ham on loan, Sterling finally ending his contract and leaving the club. Those things happened, right? But there was this shift, right, where suddenly we were looking at a center back, right? And there were some moves that have happened that I don't think were originally planned. And I'm I don't feel like those are entirely random, right? Because if you're going in with one manager and uh, when the January window starts, and that's just about when Maresca left, right? Like it was still the narrative was we're not making any signings. And then Rosenior's in and 2, 3 games in, there's suddenly like this scramble where we're linked with this Jacquet from the French league, who's obviously gone on to Liverpool now. And there's movement with Anselmino and Sarr that really wasn't, planned. Like if you I don't know how much you followed the whole Anselmino thing, for example, but I mean, the way it went with Dortmund, we there was a recall clause. We did recall him. The player was upset. Dortmund were upset. Chelsea in turn were even more upset because they felt Dortmund tried to tap him up with getting him to sign a pre-agreement, and then he was sticking around. Then he might have been loaned back to Dortmund, and then Strasbourg suddenly happens, and because we're moving Sar from Strasbourg to Chelsea, so it just feels a little bit messy and unplanned. And I feel like that unplanned, it going that way sort of indicates to me that Rosenior has seen something with the defense and has made a recommendation. And I'm using these words because he may not be have a say, but I feel like he said something that's influenced this, right? So I may be reading into it too much, but it just feels quite, if it was planned, I don't think it would have been so haphazard, right? I mean, a lot of things at the club are haphazard, but I feel like with the transfers, there tends to be some degree of planning, or maybe, there's always a lot of smoke, and a lot of noise, but this just seemed a little bit random. What do you think?
I mean, I think you're giving Rosenior a bit too much credit, or maybe you're attributing like a little bit too much power to him, or influence, right? Because I think, it was quite clear we needed a centre back when Maresca said it out loud. Now, I'm not saying Maresca was already on the way out then when he was saying that, but I think maybe there was a part of him at least that knew he was using it as a tool to pick a fight with the board. And ultimately, I'm not saying that, had they brought in a centre back when he asked for it, he would have stayed. I still think he would have left, but it was already clear. Now, like, we don't rate this ownership group, right? That's fair enough. But like you say, they have been able to manipulate the market, and they have been able to make some good deals. So let's not discredit them completely. When, a manager like at Maresca's level at the end of the Champions, what is it? The what is that? The Club World Cup? Yeah. Like his stature and his know-how of the game has only shot through the roof at that point. So when he flags something like a missing centre back, you kind of listen. And I think this ownership group have just gone about it in a way which is, they're not going to necessarily admit that they were wrong about it, but it's blatantly obvious now to everybody that it was required. So, and of course, them not signing a centre back will just create more detriment for themselves in the future, both off the pitch with the fans, but also on the pitch, right? When their asset, the club, starts to underperform. So I think it was very clear, actually, that it's just a change, a very understated, under the table change in approach from the management halfway through the season. Um, but look, nobody's going to ring any bells for it because they don't want to make a big deal about the fact that Maresca was right to raise the issue. Um, so look, having said that, I I would hope, I do hope that there is some sort of interaction there between the manager, the coach, who's training these players and who's picking the 11, and the scouting team and the recruitment teams, simply because, like you do need that input. If the person who's going to be, taking care of quote unquote assets, right, the players and improving them doesn't want one of them, then you're kind of you're creating a bit of an issue for yourself if you bring in that player anyway. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand on this. In terms of the malarkey that was going on at the end, I was kind of aware, um, but it's nothing abnormal. Like deadline day for Chelsea is usually the busiest day because that's when you need to wrap up all of your loans. I see it as, look, they kept their options open right until the last minute, and then they just had to do a quick player shuffle. They clearly don't have any loyalty towards any of these players. They're just trying to make sure that, okay, fine, they couldn't bring a Jacquet or anybody else in, and Mamadou Sarr was probably, higher on Rosenior's list at that point in time, compared to Anselmino because he's already worked with him. So I think in that regard, there has been some interaction, but that's probably at the end of the window when they're telling Rosenior, okay, we can't get anybody, so who would you prefer?
Yeah, that sounds about right, I guess. But you know, I don't know. I still feel like maybe it's just Maresca's approach to the conversation that rubbed them the wrong way because Rosenior seems like a genuinely nice guy, and if they had I mean, yes, it's clear that we knew we needed a center back, but if they were so firm in their view, and maybe it's just the way Maresca approached the conversation, I don't know. But to recap the transfers, right? So we obviously had so Disasi left. I'm gonna go outs first. Disasi's gone to West Ham on loan. Tariq George has gone to Everton on loan. Anselmino was recalled from Dortmund and sent to Strasbourg. Paez was recalled from Strasbourg and sent to River Plate. Uh, Fofana, recalled from the Turkish league, gone to Strasbourg on loan. Sterling's finally left, and Buonanote's loan was terminated, and I guess he's gone to Everton. And then, of course, we had Sarr coming in from Strasbourg, and Caleb Wiley apparently came back in from Watford, but hasn't made a move out. So the only addition really to the first team squad is Sar, and I don't know, given the activity we had, right? And now we have a manager who's sort of had a month to sort of bed in the system. His record has been good so far. We're now knocked out of the Carabao Cup, but we're through to the Champions League, the next round without the playoffs in the middle, right? And we're still in the FA Cup. We're sitting fifth in the Premier League. Where do you think we end the season? What are your expectations for the rest of the season?
I think Europa League qualification and through the Premier League, and we've already exceeded my expectations. Thanks again to Rosinho's kind of tactical ability, managerial ability during games. So, like in the Champions League, I should say, because I had predicted we would go through to the quarterfinals from the playoffs, I think. But he's gone straight into the top eight, which is fantastic for him. But yeah, I don't see us, getting past the quarterfinals. I think we will lose at that hurdle in the Champions League, or actually, no, sorry, the round of 16 proper. I always get confused because there's actually two rounds of 16. One is the playoff, and then the next one is the real round of 16. So when we walk into that round of 16 proper, I think we get knocked out. And yeah, in terms of the cups, I think valiant showing against Arsenal, and I think FA Cup. Of course, it always really depends on the draw. We'll probably beat Hull in the upcoming match, but and it's funny because it's Rosenior's ex club, right? But uh, yeah, I don't see us maybe going past the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. I think like 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 everything else in life, I'm probably getting a bit too like lyrical here and too deep, but like everything else in life, like with football, there's always trade-offs, right? So I think my understanding of Maresca's approach was, maybe there wasn't always the clearest game plan or a focused game plan on trying to score goals, but the way he was defending was by keeping the ball. And we definitely went through spells with Maresca's style of play that was just very dour, very slow. I don't think Rosenior is taking that approach. I think he as a manager has demonstrated at Strasbourg that he knows how to just sit in and defend a bit better. So hopefully we see some improvement there, and we've already seen, like you mentioned, directness and a higher tempo from his style of play already. So, like, obviously the trade-offs here are, look, when you're sitting in a bit more, and trying to be a bit more defensively solid, right? You are trying to invite teams onto you, right? And we have players who are like maybe individually very good defenders, but as a unit, they have not shown that they can, defend as a unit at the top level, right? So, what I'm saying, long story short, is I kind of expect us to go through this phase of maybe conceding a few more goals simply because Rosenior is probably a bit more pragmatic, and sits back instead of pressing all the time. And on the flip side, he will try and counterattack more and play a higher tempo possessions play with wing combinations and third man running, and it'll actually be like a higher tempo, more attacking mindset when we do have the ball. But again, that will just create more turnovers, right? We will be a little bit more riskier on the ball, and that also has its own trade off. So that's why I think maybe if Maresca was still in charge, I would see us qualifying for Champions League in the Prem, and maybe getting to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, and semifinals of FA Cup. I've kind of taken everything a step back with Rosenior in charge. Am I being too pessimistic?
Are you being too pessimistic? I mean, I think you know the answer to that. You're always being too pessimistic. No, but I mean, I think I understand why there are tempered expectations. Um, at the same time, given that, yes, it's Hull next, and then you have the fifth round, and then you're through to quarters and semis, and then the final. I feel like with the FA Cup, we should be making a good go of it because if you look at our recent run, we haven't really had any domestic trophies for a long time now. So I think it is a good way for Rosenior to come in and sort of cement his status if he can get a domestic trophy. And I think Champions League qualification is definitely still going to be the target. How we do in the Champions League, it's really down to how the next set of like the next fixture goes. I think we could get either Newcastle or PSG, so it could go either way. It is at the end of the day, sort of, it's a cup fixture, so we tend to be like, people have said Chelsea have become a cup side recently, so it could go either way. I'm hopeful we get through to the next round after as well, and we're able to make a good showing in the Champions League. And when it comes to league, like I think, like I said, Champions League will be the target, Champions League qualification. It's really tight. We're basically sandwiched between United and Liverpool right now, 1 point ahead, 1 point behind. So every game counts, and with the upcoming set of fixtures, we're going to really need to get some points on the board before the fixtures get a little tougher in March. So I think that leads us very kindly into our section where we.
Yeah, but hold on, mate. You've just gotten away with waffling and not actually saying where we're gonna finish up. So, like you can't have me stick my neck out, tell me I'm being too pessimistic, and then just not say anything.
Okay, so I think semifinals of the FA Cup would be the minimum, but I think we should get into the final and we should be winning it. I think we should finish fourth in the league. Third, Villa. I don't really think Villa sustain their form, and I feel like they're going to falter, and that's going to leave third place up for grabs as well. But I would settle for fourth there. And in the Champions League, I think I stick to my prediction where I said we get out at the quarterfinals. So there you have it. I'm always more optimistic than you. So
Yeah, I mean, you've basically just gone one round higher than me on everything, but fair enough. So you're saying we actually get top three in the Premier League?
no, no, no. I don't think we get top three. I think it's going to be up for grabs. I think like Villa are looking pretty secure right now, but I don't think they're going to do that. So up for grabs means it's going to be between United, Liverpool, and uh
Yeah, but you have to actually predict. I said Europa League
fourth.
fourth. Okay. And then for the FA Cup, you said we should win it, but you think semi-final.
I think bare minimum semi-final. I think we get to the final, whether we win it or not. I don't know.
Okay, so what's your prediction?
A final. We see a final. We're in the final, but whether we win it, I can't say.
Okay. And Champions League, what's your actual prediction?
Quarterfinals. We get knocked out at the quarterfinals.
Oh, mad. Okay. All right. I don't know. I feel like when you say it, it feels a lot worse. So I'm looking forward to the final, though. That's exciting.
But tell me something, right? We talked about expectations, right? Do you feel the squad is, I mean, you've obviously gone essentially a round behind. You're considering everything about the squad as well, right? So do you feel like the squad is stronger, given the current injuries? I mean, we just had Gittins as well announced as a long-term hamstring injury, right? So he's out as well. I don't know if you saw that in the presser before Wolves. I mean, yesterday's presser. So what do you make of the squad? Like, do you considering that injury news as well, do you still feel like your predictions will hold, or do you feel like you're still being too optimistic?
No, I think I've incorporated. I mean, like, I spoke about trade-offs, right? Ultimately, after the new manager bounce, will come a period of time where you can see where the gaps are, where he's trying to take this squad as a playing unit, and where the gaps are, where we need to improve, where the weaknesses are. His style of play will exhibit that, and I think it will kind of level off. It'll plateau. So, I mean, regardless of injuries and all of that, right? I've just basically said, okay, all else being equal, right? You probably average out a little bit lower than where Maresca was taking you because everybody was already kind of unified in their vision under him. So, look, a managerial change halfway through the season for a relegation threatened club is like can be a huge shot in the arm if it works. It looks like it's done that for us, right? But like I mentioned, we have to take the initiative in a lot of games, like 80% of our games. So, eventually teams will figure us out in this current playing model. And it's a question of whether he can obviously maintain his adaptability. And I don't even know if he's really embedded his style of football yet, or he's just kind of said, you know what, this season, I'm just going to try and win games, forget how I do it. And honestly, by the way, can I say, I think that's what's happened. I hope that he maintains this high tempo football, but I think he's identified that the high tempo direct football just suits the players that we have. And maybe in the summer he will revisit that again because our defense is crap. So if you look at the last 30 minutes of the Arsenal game, once he executed on the first 60, which is keep a clean sheet, he brings on Palmer and Esteval, but he plays a very standard style of football. Like it's literally a back four with two fullbacks who are bombing up to being wing backs. Garnacho plays a winger on the left, and Esteval plays more of an inside winger on the right. And you've got Palma and Caicedo and Enzo as a midfield three connecting things together. And Pedro kind of, just leading the line, kind of holding up the ball when he needs to, running a channel when he. It's not a 3-5-2. Like he didn't go into a system and all of that. He didn't do that. And I think obviously it demonstrates firstly that this guy actually has different ways to skin a cat, right? When Maresca was losing a game or winning a game, he would just lean more heavily into a 3-5-2 or 3-1-6. So Rossini's already demonstrated he can be adaptable. The question is whether that's his actual long-term strategy for playing on the pitch.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and it goes back to what I said earlier, right? He really hasn't had time to do much except sort of retrofit his approach into what was already there, and we should see, I think, a few more tweaks as he has more time to work with the squad, more breaks in between games, and definitely, I think come summer we'll see more wholesale changes. So yeah, I mean, it's as always, exciting times ahead for Chelsea FC. We have a pretty mixed bag of fixtures coming up. So um, we obviously have Wolves on Saturday the 7th versus away, sorry, in the Premier League. I think we should be winning that. We should continue that pretty strong run in the Premier League. Where are you with that one?
Yeah, I mean, my default is always a loss, but um, I don't know. There's something about this new style of play that we're seeing. Again, like I said, I'm not sure whether it's kind of the chosen way forward, but I think we're going to take the points against Wolves. Um, and yeah, I think it's going to be I hope it's going to be a good game to watch. Slightly more end to end than a standard Maresca game. Um, and yeah, I wanted to say I'm going to tip Pedro Neto to have a good rest of the season. Unless you tell me now that he's also injured, that would be quite funny. But yeah, I think players like Neto are going to really thrive again if Rosenior maintains this kind of slightly more fluid, slightly more attacking mindset where we're not so conservative on the ball.
Yeah, so Pedro Neto is not injured. I actually feel the same about Garnacho. I know he's been getting a lot of hate recently, and he's had some pretty limp performances, especially in the last three games or so. But I still think he's Garnacho watch is looking strong. He's had what 10 goals and assists, and I feel like he's gonna find his feet and really start contributing more. That's my expectation for
Fair enough. I can see where you're coming from it, from that, because again, the logic is the same, right? I think he didn't, Maresca didn't get the best out of his wingers because of the wingers he had. Like, okay, you can say what you want about Neto's end product, but he can beat a man, right? So I think that's why we saw Neto play a lot on both wings for Maresca. But then who is Neto going to cross to, right? That was always my question. But on the other side with Garnacho, I don't think he's a great crosser of the ball. I don't think he's a great passer of the ball. I don't think he's a great dribbler of the ball. But he's freaking rapid, right? So if you allow one of your wingers to be a little bit less dribbly and a little bit more off the ball, kind of a mover, right? Um, it's so funny. It's so funny that we're talking about an off the ball mover, right? An intelligent mover of the off of the ball in attack, because you just mentioned Gittins is out for a long time. I know a player who is without a club who actually knows Chelsea really well, but I don't think we can afford him, but yeah, that would be funny. Um, yeah, I think Rosenior is hopefully going to be less reliant on his wingers being like the sole outlets of creativity in this squad. And it looks like there's going to be a lot more fluidity in the middle of the pitch as well. Sometimes you'll see a two playing very close to each other, doing some short passes, knitting things together. Sometimes you'll just see like Caicedo holding it and Fernandez, Palmer, João Pedro all pushing up in between the lines or going beyond. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from with the Garnacho thing, and um, I mean I know you're also saying that in hope because you have that prediction, right?
No, definitely the hope is there, but it's also just I think he's shown glimpses of what he's capable of, and I think he just needs to find his footing again. Um, I definitely think another player that's gonna do really well is João Pedro. He's already equaled like I think his best ever individual goal contribution in the season is 11, and he's at 9. With Brighton 2 seasons he had 9 and 10 goals, so I think he's gonna have a career best season when it comes to goal contributions. And that's looking really exciting as well. And I mean, I know we didn't really have this like to talk about individual players, but since we are, another player I think is really going to do well and who wasn't getting a look under Maresca at all is Andre Santos, right? Rosenior's already said he's familiar with him. He knows how he plays, and Santos also knows how Rosenior's system, he likes to set up. So, for example, where he talks about that midfielder slotting in and making a back three, right? Santos knows how to do that, and we've seen him do it. So, I think, yeah, in that sense, there are some aspects of Rosenior's former system coming in, and now that he has Sarr at his disposal as well, that's two players who know his style and he knows how they play. So we could see more of Rosenior's identity forming on the squad. So, like I said, exciting time. So we've got
As long as it's not shades of Kieran and Dewsbury Hall, that's all I'm gonna say on ex ex players from the previous club coming in and helping a manager bed in.
always the pessimist, man. Always the pessimist. I have nothing else to say for that.
If I don't have pessimism, then I have nothing. So anyway, you were saying, so we've both predicted a win, which is quite a rare sight. What about Leeds at home?
So
Big
I
game.
think, okay, if I'm just gonna take this at a stretch, right? I think that, like I said, March's fixtures get a little tougher. So we really need to put some, get the points we can in these easier games. So I think Wolves win, Leeds at home also a win. We have the FA Cup fixture versus Hull that we talked about earlier the next weekend. So I think that's a win as well. And then Burnley at home, also a win, right? I think we need to get those 9 out of 9 points in the league because then we have Villa and Arsenal. And I mean, given our record versus Arsenal, if we get a draw, I'd be happy. And then with Villa, it's a bit too early to maybe call it because we're still talking about a whole month, but I'm gonna just put a draw down there. So that's my sort of shout for the next 6 fixtures that we have upcoming, right? So I've done it at a stretch. So over to you. Leeds, how do you think we do?
Yeah, I honestly I stopped listening. So with Leeds, I think we're gonna lose this one. This has like again, just because we've changed manager doesn't mean we've changed the underlying issues that this squad has. And Leeds screams that game of like, okay, they look like a team who can soak up pressure for a certain amount of time and then flip the script. We could be 1-0 up, even 2-0 up against them, and then I can see them putting a lot of pressure on us, in the last 20, 15 minutes, uh, grabbing a couple goals from, long throws, set pieces, whatever it is. I'm quite surprised that Rosinho's had this much success 1 month in. Um, because again, the new manager bounce aside, right? The playing staff has not changed, right? I actually, I see once people kind of calm down and get used to Rosinha being around. I see opposition teams hurting us in the exact same ways they used to hurt us under Maresca, and this Leeds at home. It has like all the makings of Chelsea go 1-0 up, kind of missing a few chances here and there, and then next thing you know, bang bang, lead score twice in the last 15 minutes, and you're done. Um, Hull away, yeah, that's. I think we take the point. Well, not the points. We go through in the next round. I also would hope to see a lot of rotation because one thing I've seen about Rosenior is that he is less bothered about um, like not necessarily who he's putting on the pitch, but if he has to play Hato, he'll play Hato, And like we talked about earlier on the pod, we don't necessarily think that he is the sole influencer of who starts, right? There is some input from the medical or fitness departments. I'm not sure whether the board are also telling him like, hey, you need to play this guy because he hasn't played in a while and his value is dropping or whatever. But let's just move away from that speculation. If the fitness department comes in and says, look, you need to play a completely changed side against Hull, Rosenior seems to me like the kind of manager who will just be like, okay, and then he'll try to set us up the best he can, right, with the players at his disposal, and he just moves on, you know? So again, I'm hoping to see a lot of enforced or unenforced rotation, whatever it may be against Hull, but we still go through. And it'd be nice to see Sar actually play because there's a lot of talk about him, but to see him actually play for Chelsea would be a pretty cool thing. Chelsea Burnley at home. I'm also gonna go with the same vibes with Leeds, and and then Arsenal and Aston Villa away. I think you can say goodbye to points in these games. Um, you know what? Actually, no, it's fine. I'm happy to stick with this. 2 wins in 6 sounds like the Chelsea I know.
Yeah, sounds far for the course for you. Regarding the rotation, I think definitely we see more rotation because he said, right, he's talked about leaning into rotation in one of his pressers, right? So I think we'll definitely see that a lot more. I definitely think, like giving you're discrediting the team a little bit too much with some of these predictions, but you could be right at the end of the day. So let's just see how it goes.
You're always too nice to me, man. You never really tell me what you really think. You're always like, okay, fine, let's agree to disagree and move on. But if my predictions are shit, you should just tell me, man.
No, they are shit. I mean, you're discrediting the team for sure, but at the same time, like I understand why you approach it this way, right? And I can't help that you're such a fucking negative Nancy, right? So
Yes, but I actually don't swear or I'm not as profane as you are. So, look, all I'm saying is we've had the up, right? And usually after the podcast, you know, it's when things start to get a little bit real, right? So, okay, all jokes aside, I actually have very, very good reasoning. It's that defense. Like, we have not improved, right? This is why I'm quite excited to see Sar. And I fucking love, honestly, man, I would rather we spend a shit ton more money on our defense than on our attack. Just in general. Even if this wasn't, the current playing stuff that we had at Chelsea. I love a good defender. We don't actually have one. I mean, like, I'm really, really skeptical of saying anything positive about Fofana and also about Chalobah. Chalobah in the last few games, I've been like, I feel like I've been redeemed because overall he's showing he's still the most reliable defender because a new manager has come in and still played him almost every game. So I'm a little skeptical about saying anything nice about those two guys, but they're showing that there could be a partnership there, right? If they sort that out, then yeah, maybe my predictions would be different. But then we've thrown in a new manager, right? Who's going to defend differently, who's going to attack differently, who's going to transition between the two differently. It's all up in the air. Now, hopefully, this is exactly why these guys wanted to have Strasbourg and then whichever Portuguese club that they tried to buy and failed. It's because you have a feeder system where the tactics are the same, the staff all kind of get trained the same, everybody learns the same, almost the same style of football, and so if there's kind of a one in one out situation, there isn't so much turmoil and the transition is a little softer, right? But this is the Premier League, and maybe I'm discrediting Chelsea, but I'm also giving credit to our opponents, man. Like even the Leeds and the Burnleys have already hurt us this season. I again, this is the great thing about having rewatched certain highlights. That game against Leeds away from home. I'm not sure if we said it in a pod before that game. I think we did, but we knew we were going to get blitzed. We knew it, and we still did not get up for that game at the start. We still got hit from a set piece early on and then nearly conceded from a set piece again after that. Like it doesn't, just because we've changed the manager, it doesn't change your opposition and the fact that Chelsea are still exposed in certain ways.
No, that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. And I guess that's the benefit of like rewatching that you know a lot of these issues are fresh in your head. I knew we lost. I didn't remember the manner of the loss, but yeah, I guess that's fair. I will say one thing though under Rosenior again. I don't know if it's just something he's doing to foster this, but the whole end game shenanigans, the shithousery versus West Ham, you definitely saw a really strong collective spirit, right? Like you had Palmer who usually just sits and just stays out of it, even getting involved. So I think that's one major positive that if the squad is really sticking up for each other and working collectively, it can only mean a sign of good things, right? So I think yeah, and let's just see. I think Wolves and Leeds, we have to be winning. Um, like I don't see it going any other way.
Yeah,
Despite the
in terms of the need for points, I'm not. We need to win all of these games, right? But it's more about, like, obviously how realistic that is. And if Rosenior is who we say he is, and we've picked him right, he has a bit of time to bed in a more solid defense, train them on how to actually defend in a mid block, and that changes the perspective, right? Because even against Leeds and Burnley, you're going to need 20 minutes, 15 minutes to just be able to control the game from your defensive position, not with the ball but without. But I like you say, it all remains to be seen.
Yep, remains to be seen. So I think that puts a wrap on this one. If you like what you've heard, leave us a review on Spotify, 5-star rating, subscribe, share this with other Chelsea fans. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I think that's a wrap, unless you have any last words, Sharon.
No, I just wanted to point out that this is probably the most shade I've ever received from you in any of our interactions in history. So it's good that the optimist is now coming down to my level a bit.
Yeah, well, I guess, so much turmoil can do that to someone. So it's trauma, man. It's trauma.
Yeah, and we've already been doing this for a season and a half, so I suppose, yeah, it's all getting a bit samey. Who knows? Maybe the next episode I'll have changed.
Well, on that note, peace.